The Nevermets by Salomea Becquerel. Part 3. After the earthquake. The regional plane was popping up and down in turbulent waves like a yo-yo, making children on the seats next to me joyfully squeal. Now that I had somewhat accepted the reality I had been fearing all along, that this is all a dream and I am not getting my fairy tale ending but just another scar, I was strangely at peace. The anxiety had evaporated, the truth was finally said, and all this road less traveled had led to was simply back to myself. That's not such a bad place after all. Once we landed in Birmingham, I was shocked by the burning sun and the suffocating heat, and felt as if everybody's looking at me, a stranger in strange clothes, with a strange voice, strange accent and sins to repent. Now that my phone was back online, it captured 4 of his texts he sent in the meantime, wishes for a safe journey, that he has a lot to think about and that he's going to work for the rest of the day. I deleted those immediately without responding. I was not mad, I managed to sufficiently grieve on the airplane to function, I just really needed time, but for completely different reasons than he suggested. I need the time to heal and grow. For my own sake. As the taxi was taking me down a concrete road you could probably fry an egg on, I was hypnotized by the green trees seemingly everywhere and started to wonder how the lab life will look like, what project I'll end up working on and how will I get to the lab tomorrow at all. My roommate said she will let me borrow her bike for my commute. The issue was that the heat was so scorching I would need to leave pretty much with the dawn break and return after sunset. Maybe it's not a bad thing. The taxi dropped me off by a wood-paneled house in a quiet cul-de-sac road next to a small forest. When I rang the bell of the porch door, nobody opened. I could only hear a dog bark inside. I remembered that my roommate said she was going to be back home at 4, so I sat at the stairs and looked at the neighborhood. The street was eerily quiet and devoid of people. There were no voices, no sounds of human activity, just relentless cicadas and an occasional rustle of the grass. I found it so odd there were no people in the streets. It still felt very apocalyptic to me. Finally, an old Honda pulled up in the driveway, and my roommate and her friend showed up. All I knew was she was about a decade older than me, UK-born, American-raised and Harvard-educated. She showed me my room, her old cat and her young barky dog, and later that evening introduced me to a neighbor, Noah, a PhD student at UAB originally from Washington who was sharing a house down the street with 4 other UAB students. Privy to my predicament of being an international student who had never set a foot on Alabama soil before, he offered to drive me to the campus and back the next day, and navigate me to the offices that needed to stamp some paperwork for me, which I gladly accepted. At 7 p.m., I was feeling bone-crushing fatigue. I found the second half of the sandwich from New Haven in my backpack, gulped it for dinner and fell asleep immediately with my clothes still on. After literally weeks of anxiety-induced sleep deprivation, drastic time zone change and lingering jet lag, I finally achieved a night of restful, dreamless sleep. The next morning, Noah took me to the university campus just like he promised, and took me for a morning coffee and a bagel on the way there which he refused to let me pay for. I was immediately suspicious, although the vibe seemed innocuous. Am I a stupid slut to you that you hope to ingratiate yourself with so she lets you take advantage of her? What other reason could you possibly have to treat me kindly? I was completely oblivious at that time that this was in fact the trauma I went through talking. My pi turned out to be amazing and really supportive. He discussed my background with me, my goals and ambitions, and offered me several neuro-oncology projects to pick from. Instead of treating me with condescension or disdain like many other foreigners reported being treated prior to my departure, he was perfectly professional and treated me with respect. Noah showed me around the campus, including a campus church. I sat in the front row, pulled out the Bible and turned to First Letter to the Corinthians 13:4-8. I felt a strange kind of peace reading about love being patient and kind, thinking that if it is love after all, patience and kindness will eventually get us there, somehow. I can wait for love. Noah drove me back from campus that evening, and went in to talk to my roommate and to chat about my first day. Somehow I felt obliged to email New Haven about my first day. He reached out by chat on Skype instead of responding to my email and asked me about my project and a few things I don't remember anymore. My hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis causes a weird thing. After profound stress, I get skin abscesses. Sometimes I gauge the impact of an event on me by their appearance because my mind often dissociates during stress. I found 3 of those on my skin that day. I couldn't find my antibiotic ointment and asked him if it has fallen somewhere on the floor in his apartment. It didn't. That was the end of that conversation, no acknowledgement of anything between us. I wondered if he had already moved on and shifted me to the friend zone. Moreover, when I was crying at the airport like an idiot, he said that now that we are in the same time zone, we can call each other and be in touch more. He obviously didn't call that evening. If I was to give him the benefit of the doubt that he actually means what he says and wants to build up some foundation before making any decisions, as if we both had not made those already, that would also mean investing time and effort into building those. Where was that effort? He didn't even text me. Later that evening, Noah texted me about a concert of a local folk band at the campus tomorrow evening, asking if I want to go with him. I agreed, thinking he is trying to arrange for some Southern cultural immersion for me. He said he will pick me up again in the morning so he can then drive me back from the campus. He also took me to a store to buy a US cell phone the next day. It's the little things like this that make a massive difference, and the concert turned out to be great. I still carry the ticket in my wallet. Noah was funny and a cheer to be around, and he was not trying to pull anything untoward. We just sat in the grass under a forget-me-not blue sky, and listened to music. No accidental touching, no suggestive looks or ambiguous words, just sharing space and an experience. It felt safe and genuine, not sleazy. About halfway through, the band played a song that somehow stirred up intense emotions in my heart. I am not sure if it was the atmosphere, the song or the evening light, but I somehow realized that I may in fact be truly in love with New Haven after all, and that I wish he were there with me. Could I really still like someone who put me through such trauma, or is it just the yearning after my own fantasy talking? Noah simply dropped me off at home with a short goodbye afterwards, just like he said he would. He was so perfectly neutral that I figured I'm not his type and he's just looking to spend some time in the company of someone who doesn't have the lyrics to Sweet Home, Alabama memorized. We both agreed it's a great song though. I was so happy after the concert I opened my email to tell New Haven all about it, yet once I wrote up my glowing review, I remembered I felt the need to reach out to you once you stopped reaching out to me ominous part, and deleted it immediately. I sent him a quick email earlier that day to share I'm going to the concert, and that I bought a US cell phone, curious to see if he will ask me for that number. He didn't. Noah drove me around the first week and we talked about everything from childhood through lab life to career plans. He seemed absurdly transparent, introduced me to his roommates, took me to a party with other students, and I realized about Thursday night when we drove to an ice cream store that there is precisely one word that defines how I felt with him: safe. He did everything he said he would do. What he said always meant exactly that. No ambiguity, no games. No failed promises. By simply keeping his word and saying things that are true, as every normal person should, he made me feel that my expectations are indeed legitimate and not all that hard to meet. I wasn't the problem, the diva or the asshole. New Haven was. My insecure and band-aided gradually realized it wanted something with a long-term potential, with someone who's actually there instead of a whirlwind romance. Someone who knows what they want, prepared to work on their shit instead of making it everyone else's burden. On Friday, my sister reported some distressing news from back home, the kind of news that you would call someone close to you with and share, expecting compassion and support. Yet being aware of how self-absorbed and emotionally unavailable New Haven is, I had no doubt he would see me sharing this as yet another problem on his shoulders, a burden to bear, and me as high maintenance and needy. So I didn't reach out to New Haven at all that day, and decided to take whatever happens next as a sign for what I'm supposed to do. I believe in signs and I follow them. He sent me a chat message on Skype later at night, explaining he is packing for his vacation and how wild it is that a washing machine in the laundry room wasn't working. I mean, who gives a shit? Be a big boy and go to a laundromat for all I care. He said he booked a taxi for early in the morning to go to the airport, I guess when he needs to catch a flight, taking a taxi is okay, so he is going to bed early, likely to quench any expectations he would Skype with me that evening. And that was all he wrote. All about him, himself, and himself only. Digesting those words in the context of what happened back home, I concluded that this is obviously nothing like love. This is showing off to an impressionable schoolgirl, which kinda worked until I had my own experiences. My pi was a surgeon and we talked about residency extensively. Noah introduced me to UAB medical student and I met residents doing research in neighboring labs. With this frame of reference, I could see that New Haven was full of it. Moreover, seeing the sharp contrast to how Noah was treating me, I concluded I gave him way more understanding and patience than he ever deserved. All he ever did was take advantage of me and shatter my heart. Why the fuck would I give him any time and patience? What grade of arrogance is this entitlement even coming from? Just because you match to a residency at a fancy institution doesn't make you the second coming. Love indeed deserves patience and kindness. This wasn't love. This wasn't worth waiting for. Him asking me for patience and time was an end while keeping the illusion of hope. I didn't need any illusions anymore. I needed love, warmth, reassurance and understanding. He was capable of neither. The 22nd of June 2007, with the deafening concerto of crickets outside my window playing to the brightest stars, I realized that it's nobody's fault when people simply aren't compatible. Each was hoping for something completely different, which is in hindsight would have transpired quickly if we had a few regular dates. Sticking to my boundaries and not listening to a parental figure that gave me bad advice every time could have spared me this entire horrible experience. To make sure I'm not misinterpreting anything, as I had lost trust in my own judgment, the next day I talked to a trusted friend back home. I told him everything, what went down in New Haven and where things are now, showed him the Skype messages, all of it. When I finished, I asked, "Did I get duped?" He said, "You fell for it like a dumb idiot." Yeah, I probably did. There is nothing authentic there, right? I asked him. No, there really isn't. Nothing will come out of this, right? There's no way. He was saying out loud what I already knew. So, with his help and support, I finally gathered the courage and took control of the situation. I blocked all his email addresses so any emails he'd send me would bounce back as undeliverable, blocked him on Skype and turned off my home phone. He never asked for my US number, so that took care of all channels. To prove that I have grown, instead of simply ghosting him, I typed up a goodbye letter explicitly saying that I thought a lot about this and see no other way but to end our communication. There was no relationship to end. I printed and signed the letter to make it clear I mean business, and made a process of mailing it that day. I had truly made a decision. One that had always been up to me.